The colony of New Horizons celebrated its 15th anniversary with smiles and laughter. Located in the Alpha Centauri system, it was humanity's first successful settlement beyond the solar system. The streets were lined with colorful banners, and the air smelled of barbecue and freshly baked bread. Children ran between the sturdy prefab buildings that had, over time, been customized with gardens and personal touches. Commander Lisa Blackwell watched the celebrations from the observation deck of the Defense Center. At 43, she had been one of the first military personnel assigned to protect the colony. Her brown hair was cut in a practical bob, and her uniform was crisp despite the heat. Lisa smiled as she saw Governor Heather Walsh giving a speech in the main square. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said Dr. Alan Mitchell as he joined her. The xenobiologist had been studying the native plant life of the planet for nearly a decade. His research had helped make farming possible on New Horizon. 15 years, Lisa said. "Hard to believe we've come this far." Alan nodded. "I remember, when this was all just landing pads and emergency shelters. The colony now housed over 10,000 people. It had schools, hospitals, research centers, and even a small university. It was humanity's pride, proof that they could live among the stars." "Any news from Earth?" Alan asked. "The supply ship is due in 3 days," Lisa replied. "Captain Torres radioed this morning. The Starseeker is on schedule." Frank Torres was one of the most reliable pilots on the Earth Centauri route. His civilian transport brought not just supplies but also mail and new colonists every 2 months. A young officer rushed into the observation deck, interrupting their conversation. "Commander, we're picking up unusual readings at the edge of the system." Lisa frowned. "Define unusual, Lieutenant Carter." "Energy signatures we haven't seen before. They don't match any known human ships." Lisa's relaxed mood vanished instantly. "Show me." In the control room, screens displayed the approaching anomalies. 6 large objects moving faster than any human vessel could travel. "Send a greeting on all frequencies," Lisa ordered. Humanity had never encountered alien life, but they had protocols in place. "No response, Commander," Lieutenant Carter said, after trying several times. "Alert Governor Walsh." "We need to activate emergency protocols," Lisa said, her voice calm despite the racing of her heart. Before the lieutenant could relay the message, the objects suddenly accelerated. Within minutes, they emerged from the darkness of space. Ships, clearly not of human design. They were sleek, with strange angles and a metallic surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "My God," Alan whispered. Without warning or communication, the lead ship fired. A beam of intense energy struck one of the orbital platforms, destroying it instantly. "Battle stations!" Lisa shouted into the comm system. "This is not a drill." The colony had minimal defenses, a few orbital platforms and ground-based weapons, designed more to deal with meteors than an attack. They were not prepared for war. Lisa ran to the emergency communication array. "This is Commander Lisa Blackwell of New Horizon Colony. We are under attack by unknown forces. Repeat, we are under attack." She sent the distress signal toward Earth, knowing it would take over 4 years for the message to reach home. On the ground, panic spread through the celebration. Governor Walsh tried to organize an evacuation to the emergency bunkers, but it was chaos. The aliens fired again, this time hitting the colony's power plant. Lights flickered and died across New Horizon. Dr. Mitchell rushed to his laboratory. He had to save his research data. As he downloaded files to a portable drive, he looked through his window and saw something disturbing. The alien ships were landing. Strange figures emerged, tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. They moved with military precision, capturing rather than killing colonists they encountered. "They're taking people," he said into his communicator. In the spaceport, Captain Frank Torres had just landed the Starseeker, ahead of schedule. When the attack began, he knew he had to act fast. He opened the ship's doors to fleeing colonists. "Get in, quickly!" he shouted, helping a woman with 2 small children up the ramp. The Starseeker wasn't made for combat, but it was fast. If they could get to hyperspace, they might escape. Frank looked at the desperate faces boarding his ship. He could save maybe 50 people. Commander Blackwell organized what resistance she could. Security officers and volunteers armed themselves with whatever weapons they had. They fought bravely, but they were outmatched. "Fall back to the central complex," Lisa ordered. "We need to protect the civilians." The aliens moved methodically through the colony. Their weapons cut through buildings with ease. Some colonists were killed, but many were captured and taken to the alien ships. In his lab, Dr. Mitchell watched as the aliens entered the science building. He hid behind equipment as they moved through the facility, taking samples of his work. He heard them communicate in strange, clicking sounds. When they left, he crept out and made his way to the defense center. Lisa was still coordinating the defense when Alan arrived. "They're collecting specimens," he told her. "Plants, animals, and people." "Why?" Lisa asked, firing at an alien that appeared in the doorway. "I don't know," Alan replied. "But they're being careful with what they take." At the spaceport, Frank Torres prepared for takeoff. The Starseeker was overloaded with refugees, nearly 80 people crammed into a ship designed for 40. As the engines warmed up, he saw aliens approaching the spaceport. "Everyone hold on," he shouted, ignoring all safety protocols and forcing the ship into the air. Energy beams from the alien ship struck around them, but Frank's skill as a pilot kept them alive long enough to reach space. The Starseeker shuddered as it pushed beyond its limits, but it held together. In the defense center, Lisa and Alan watched as one by one, their weapon systems failed. The colony was falling. "We need to record what's happening," Lisa said, activating a video log. "Someone needs to know." The defense center's doors burst open. The alien beings entered, their strange weapons pointed at the humans. For a moment, there was stillness. Then one of the aliens stepped forward. It held up a device that projected an image, a crude map of human-controlled space. "Humans are insignificant," came a mechanical voice from the device. "You will not resist." The aliens took Lisa, Alan, and the other survivors prisoner. As they were marched to the waiting ships, they saw their colony in ruins. Buildings burned, bodies lay in the streets, and the once festive banners now hung in tatters. In space, the Starseeker limped away from Alpha Centauri, carrying the only free survivors of New Horizon. Frank Torres looked back at the colony, now visible only as a small dot of light near the star. "Where can we go?" asked one of the refugees. "Home," Frank said grimly. "We need to warn Earth." He didn't tell them that the journey would take years even at top speed. He didn't tell them that by the time they arrived, it might be too late. Instead, he plotted the course and engaged the engines, carrying the news of humanity's first encounter with alien life, and the beginning of a war no one had expected. 3 months after the attack on New Horizon, Earth was a planet transformed by grief and rage. The distress signal from Commander Lisa Blackwell had reached home, traveling across the vast emptiness of space to deliver its terrible news. Crow, message played on screens worldwide, showing the final moments before the defense center fell. In the grand meeting hall of the United Earth Defense Command in Geneva, Admiral Victoria Nelson stood before a table of grim-faced leaders. At 62, she had served in Earth Space Forces for nearly 4 decades, but nothing had prepared her for this. "The attack on New Horizon was not random," she said, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "It was calculated." The room was silent as she brought up a holographic display showing the destroyed colony. Next to her stood Lieutenant Ryan Ford, a young officer who had survived the attack by hiding in the colony's water treatment facility. The Starseeker had rescued him during its escape. "Lieutenant Ford," Admiral Nelson said, "please tell them what you saw." Ryan stepped forward. His uniform hung loose on his frame. He had lost weight during the escape. "The aliens were methodical. They destroyed our defenses first, then targeted infrastructure. But they kept many buildings intact. They wanted prisoners." Director William Clark, the head of Earth's intelligence services, raised a hand. "Do we know why they took prisoners?" "Not with certainty," Ryan answered. "But Dr. Mitchell observed them collecting samples of everything: plants, animals, technology, and people. At the far end of the table, Dr. Elizabeth Monroe opened a file on her tablet. The weapons specialist had been working non-stop since news of the attack reached Earth. "We've analyzed the weapon signatures from the footage," she said. "They use a form of directed energy we haven't developed yet, but we now understand the basic principles." General Samuel Ortiz, a veteran of conflicts on Mars and a master strategist, studied the tactical display. "How many ships do we have ready?" 83 combat-capable vessels, Admiral Nelson replied, "but most were designed for patrolling our solar system, not deep space warfare." "That will change, Ro," said the president of the United Earth government, who sat at the head of the table. "As of this morning, every shipyard on Earth and Mars has been converted to military production." The leaders nodded in agreement. Humanity had been at peace for decades, focused on exploration and colonization. Now they faced an enemy who saw them as insignificant. Dr. Monroe stood and walked to the main display. "I've been leading a team developing countermeasures to the alien technology we observed. We call them the Coraxians, based on fragments of their language Lieutenant Ford recorded." She displayed schematics of new weapon systems. "These designs are ready for immediate production. They exploit weaknesses we've identified in their shield frequencies." "How soon until we can deploy a response fleet?" General Ortiz asked. 6 months for the first ships," Admiral Nelson answered. "A year for a full battle group. The Coraxians won't expect us to retaliate," Director Clark added. "Our intelligence suggests they've done this before to other young spacefaring species. They attack a colony, take what they want, and the species retreats back to their home system." The president stood, his face resolute. "They've gravely miscalculated. Humanity will not cower. We will not retreat." Later that day, the United Earth Parliament voted unanimously to declare war. The Retribution Initiative was born, a comprehensive plan to build, equip, and train a fleet unlike anything humanity had created before. In the shipyards orbiting Earth, construction began immediately. New designs were implemented, incorporating lessons from the attack. Engineers worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of human technology. General Ortiz established a training facility on the far side of the moon, where military personnel learned new tactics. "The Coraxians rely on superior technology and intimidation," he told his officers. "We will use their overconfidence against them." Lieutenant Ryan Ford joined the training program, driven by memories of New Horizon. During combat simulations, he showed an intuitive understanding of how the Coraxians fought. "They're predictable," he explained during a briefing. "They follow patterns. Once we recognize those patterns, we can exploit them." In her laboratory, beneath the mountains of Switzerland, Dr. Monroe tested prototype weapons. Each failure brought new insights. Each success moved humanity closer to parity with their enemy. "They think we're primitive," she told her team as they celebrated a breakthrough in shield penetration. "Let's show them how dangerous primitive can be." Admiral Nelson oversaw it all, coordinating the largest military buildup in Earth's history. Ships, weapons, personnel, everything had to work together perfectly. The future of humanity depended on it. "We're not just fighting for revenge," she reminded her command staff. "We're fighting for our right to exist among the stars." 6 months after the declaration of war, the first ship of the new fleet was commissioned. Named Defiance, it incorporated all the innovations developed since the attack. Admiral Nelson stood on the bridge, inspecting systems that would have seemed like fantasy a year earlier. "It's only the beginning," Director Clark said as he joined her on the command deck. "Our deep space probes have located several Coraxian outposts. When we're ready, we'll know where to strike." On the 1-year anniversary of the New Horizon attack, Earth held a solemn ceremony. The names of the colonists, both the confirmed, dead, and those taken prisoner, were read aloud in capitals around the world. Afterward, Admiral Nelson addressed the global audience. "Today we remember," she said, standing before the newly completed flagship of the fleet. "Tomorrow we act." The Coraxians believed we would accept defeat, that we would shrink back to Earth and abandon our place among the stars. They thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. She gestured to the massive vessel behind her. On its hull, in bold letters, was the name Retribution. They were wrong. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Throughout the solar system, in factories and training grounds and laboratories, humans worked with single-minded purpose. Earth had never been more united. In his quarters aboard the Defiance, Lieutenant Ford looked at a photograph of New Horizon taken before the attack. The peaceful colony was gone, but its people would not be forgotten. "We're coming," he whispered, to the images of friends now dead or captured. "Hold on." As the first anniversary came to a close, the vanguard of the fleet of Retribution prepared to depart the solar system. Humanity was going to war, not just to avenge their fallen, but to secure their future among the stars. The Caraxians had awakened something they never expected. A young species with the determination to fight back and the ingenuity to win. 8 months after the attack on New Horizon, the fleet of Retribution moved through the darkness of space. The ships traveled in small groups, probing the edges of known territory, searching for signs of the enemy. Each vessel was a testament to human determination, built faster than anyone thought possible, equipped with technology developed specifically to counter the Caraxian threat. Commander Jason Martinez stood on the bridge of the stealth ship, Shadow. At 35, he had been chosen to lead one of the most dangerous missions yet, infiltrating a Caraxian outpost. The small station orbited a distant moon, far from major travel routes, making it an ideal target. "Final approach, Lieutenant," Olivia Wright announced from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved confidently over the controls, guiding the ship closer to their objective. Stealth systems at maximum. The Shadow was unlike any vessel humans had built before. Its hull absorbed sensor waves rather than reflecting them, and its engines left minimal thermal signatures. It was designed to be invisible, and so far, it worked. "Any signs they've detected us?" Jason asked. Major Kyle Bennett checked the sensor readings at his station. The intelligence officer had spent months studying what little they knew about Caraxian defense systems. "Nothing yet. Their patrol ships are following standard routes." Dr. Andrea Phillips listened to the Caraxian communications from her station. The xenolinguist had learned enough of their language to understand basic transmissions. Normal chatter, no alarm signals. The team had trained together for 3 months, simulating this mission countless times. Still, Jason felt the weight of responsibility. This would be humanity's first offensive operation against the Caraxians. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. Specialist Greg Harrison, the communications expert, activated a device that would temporarily disrupt the outpost's sensors. "Jamming initiated. We have 3 minutes." The Shadow approached the outpost from its blind spot, a vulnerability the mission planners had identified from studying footage of similar Caraxian structures. As they drew closer, the alien design became clearer, angular and efficient with no concessions to aesthetics. "Docking procedure starting," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the tension. Jason turned to the 12 soldiers waiting in the deployment bay. "Remember, we need prisoners and intact data systems, minimal damage." The Shadow connected to the outpost with a soft thud. For a moment, everything was still. Then the docking tube sealed, and Jason gave the signal. The strike team moved into the Caraxian station, weapons ready. The interior was bizarre by human standards. The corridors twisted at unusual angles, and the lighting pulsed in patterns that seemed random. The team moved according to plan, neutralizing the minimal security forces with stun weapons. They weren't expecting this, Major Bennett observed as they secured another section. No heavy weapons, minimal resistance. Within 20 minutes, they controlled the outpost. The Caraxian crew, 8 beings with their distinctive 4-armed physiology and stone-like skin, were contained in a storage area. Only one had been injured in the fighting. Dr. Phillips approached one of the prisoners. "We need access to your central data systems," she said in the Caraxian language, her pronunciation careful. The Caraxians' reaction was immediate, shock that a human could speak their tongue. After a brief hesitation, the leader of the group provided the access codes they needed. They had not been trained to resist capture. The idea that humans could threaten them had never occurred to their military planners. In the control room, Specialist Harrison connected their equipment to the Caraxian computers. Beginning data extraction. There's a lot here. Dr. Phillips worked beside him, translating file structures and command sequences. Focus on these directories. They contain tactical information. As the download progressed, Major Bennett discovered something disturbing. Commander, look at this. He pointed to a section of the display showing recognizable human DNA sequences. They're studying us, systematically. Jason looked over the data. It showed detailed analysis of human biology, psychology, and social structures. They're looking for weaknesses. But the most important discovery came when Dr. Phillips accessed communication logs. They have the New Horizon prisoners, she said, her voice tight with emotion. They're being held at a research facility in the Proxima system. Can you pinpoint the location? Jason asked. Coordinates are downloading now, Harrison confirmed. Then the specialist noticed something else. Commander, I'm finding references to a large fleet. They're planning another attack. The data showed a Caraxian battle group assembling near a jump point preparing for a direct assault on the Sol system. Earth itself was the target this time. We need to warn Admiral Nelson, Jason said. How long until the download is complete? Another 10 minutes for the essential data, Harrison replied, but they didn't have 10 minutes. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the outpost. Proximity alert, Olivia called from her link to the shadow. Caraxian cruiser approaching. They're not responding to the outpost's automated signals. They're suspicious, Major Bennett said. We need to move. Jason made a quick decision. Take what we have and fall back to the ship. The team began retreating, shepherding their prisoners toward the shadow. Dr. Phillips copied as much data as possible to portable drives before abandoning the terminal. As they reached the docking tube, the outpost shook violently. The Caraxian cruiser had opened fire. Everyone on board now, Jason ordered. The last team members were barely through the airlock when the shadow detached from the outpost. Lieutenant Wright immediately took them away from the station, pushing the engines to their limits. They're pursuing, she reported. Major Bennett studied the tactical display. 1 cruiser, 2 escort vessels. They're faster than we are. Transmit the data to Fleet Command, Jason ordered Harrison. All of it. Priority encryption. As Harrison worked to establish a secure channel, the Caraxian ships closed the distance. The shadow shuddered as energy beams glanced off its hull. Shields. At 60%, Olivia reported. Transmission complete, Harrison announced. Fleet Command acknowledges. Jason nodded. The mission had succeeded, even if they didn't make it back. Earth would know about the prisoners and the planned attack. New jump coordinates, he told Olivia. Random pattern, maximum distance. The Caraxian ships fired again, scoring a direct hit. Systems failed across the shadow, but the engine still functioned. Jump drive charging, Olivia said, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. 5 seconds. Dr. Phillips looked at the screen showing their Caraxian prisoners. They seem confused. They can't understand why we would risk this. They will, Jason said as space distorted around them. The shadow leaped into hyperspace, escaping its pursuers. In the command center of Earth's defense fleet, Admiral Nelson received the shadow's transmission. The data confirmed her worst fears but also gave her hope. They knew where the enemy was gathering and, more importantly, where to find the captured colonists. She turned to her staff. Prepare the fleet. We're accelerating the timetable. The fleet of Retribution would sail sooner than planned. The Caraxians were about to learn that humans would go to any length to rescue their people and to protect their home. 18 months after the attack on New Horizon, the human fleet gathered near the edge of the Arcturus system. 200 ships of various sizes formed battle groups, ready to engage the approaching Caraxian force. Admiral Victoria Nelson stood on the bridge of her flagship, studying tactical displays that showed the enemy's position. They still don't know we're here, she said to her officers. Maintain stealth protocols. The humans had positioned themselves behind a dense asteroid field, hiding their heat signatures and communications. Intelligence from Commander Martinez's mission had given them the enemy's route and timetable. Now they waited, ready to spring a trap on the very force intended to attack Earth. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Scott Hayes, her tactical officer. At 30, he was young for his position, but his innovative combat strategies had earned him the role. "The Nemesis team reports they're in position as well," added her communications officer. Admiral Nelson nodded with satisfaction. Captain Diana Ward and her stealth battleship Nemesis had departed 3 days earlier on their own critical mission. Everything was falling into place. "Send to all ships, Operation Turning Point commences in 30 minutes. Maintain positions until my signal." In another part of space, the Nemesis approached the Caraxian research facility where the New Horizon prisoners were held. The sleek black ship was nearly invisible against the darkness of space, its advanced stealth systems concealing it from enemy sensors. On the bridge, Captain Diana Ward reviewed the assault plan one final time with Colonel Peter Griffin, who would lead the Marine Rescue Force. "The prisoners are held in this section," Diana said, highlighting an area on the facility schematic. "Our priority is getting them out quickly." Colonel Griffin nodded. At 45, he had the weathered face of a veteran, but his eyes burned with purpose. "My teams are ready. We go in fast, secure the prisoners, and extract before they can organize a response." In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Kevin Bailey prepared for the arrival of the prisoners. The engineer had spent months studying Caraxian technology and its effects on human physiology. "We don't know what condition they'll be in," he told his medical team. "Be ready for anything." As both human forces prepared for combat, the Caraxian commanders remained confident. Their fleet moved steadily toward the Sol system, unaware of the trap awaiting them. They had never considered humans a significant threat. The attack on New Horizon had been meant as a demonstration, a warning to the young species to stay within its home system. Near Arcturus, Admiral Nelson gave the order, "All ships battle positions. Execute Combat Plan Delta." The human fleet surged from its hiding place. Faster ships raced ahead, targeting the smaller Caraxian vessels at the fleet's edges. Larger battleships moved into position to engage the enemy cruisers. The Caraxians reacted with surprise, their formations breaking as they attempted to respond to the unexpected attack. Their commander, Sub-Imperator Drekthal, could not believe what his sensors showed. "Impossible," he said in his native tongue. "Humans do not have this capability." But the evidence was undeniable. Human ships struck with precision, using weapons specifically designed to penetrate Caraxian shields. Lieutenant Commander Hayes had developed tactics that exploited the rigid Caraxian battle doctrines, predicting their responses and countering them before they happened. As the battle raged, near Arcturus, the Nemesis docked with the research facility housing the New Horizon prisoners. Colonel Griffin led his Marines through the airlock, their weapons ready. "Remember your training," he told them. "These corridors will be configured differently than human designs. Stay together." The Marines moved through the facility with practiced efficiency. The few Caraxian guards they encountered were quickly neutralized with stun weapons. Unlike the outpost Commander Martinez had raided, this facility was not prepared for a direct assault. Colonel Griffin's team reached the prisoner section within minutes. The sight that greeted them filled them with rage and determination. Dozens of humans from New Horizon were held in transparent cells, many showing signs of experimentation and mistreatment. "Get these people out of here," Griffin ordered, his voice tight with controlled anger. Among the prisoners, they found Commander Lisa Blackwell, thinner than before but still alive. When the cell door opened, she stood on shaky legs. "You came," she said, disbelief in her voice. "We'll always come for our people," Colonel Griffin replied, helping her toward the extraction point. Dr. Alan Mitchell was in another cell, notes about his research scattered around him. The Caraxians had forced him to continue his work, using his knowledge of xenobiology to help them understand Earth life forms. "The data," he said weakly as Marines helped him out. "We can't let them keep it." At the Arcturus battle, Admiral Nelson's forces pressed their advantage. The human ships maneuvered in ways the Caraxians couldn't predict, breaking formation and regrouping using the asteroid field to mask their movements. "Target their flagship," Nelson ordered. "All available ships, concentrate fire." The Caraxian, Command vessel's shields flickered and failed under the sustained attack. As it began to break apart, Admiral Nelson opened a communication channel. "This is Admiral Victoria Nelson of the Fleet of Retribution. Your forces are defeated. Surrender now." There was no response. The remaining Caraxian ships attempted to retreat, but many were captured or destroyed before they could escape. On the research facility, Colonel Griffin's team had secured all the prisoners and were preparing to leave when Dr. Bailey made a discovery in the research labs. "Captain Ward," he called over the comm. "I found their research data. They've been mapping human genetic structure, looking for weaknesses they could exploit in future attacks." "Copy it and destroy the originals," Captain Ward ordered. "Leave nothing behind." As the Nemesis detached from the station with the rescued prisoners, Captain Ward sent a signal to the devices her team had placed throughout the facility. Explosions ripped through the research labs, destroying the Caraxian work. The rescued prisoners, nearly 300 in total, were brought to the medical bay. Despite months of captivity and experimentation, most would recover fully. Dr. Bailey and his team worked tirelessly to treat their immediate needs. Commander Blackwell, regaining her strength, met with Captain Ward in the ship's conference room. "How many escaped from New Horizon?" she asked. "Just under 100 on the Starseeker," Diana replied. "Lieutenant Ryan Ford was among them. He's been instrumental in our efforts." Lisa nodded, taking in the news. "And Earth? Is it safe?" "The Caraxian attack fleet has been defeated," Diana assured her, "and their research on human weaknesses is now ashes." Lisa looked out the viewport at the stars. "When we were captured, they told us humans would never fight back, that we would hide on Earth and abandon the stars." Captain Ward smiled. "They were wrong about us, completely wrong." As the Nemesis jumped to rendezvous with the main fleet, Admiral Nelson received the news of the successful rescue. The day had brought two critical victories: the defeat of the EI Caraxian battle group and the rescue of the New Horizon survivors. But Nelson knew this was just the beginning. They had hurt the Caraxians, but not defeated them. The real test would come when they took the fight to the enemy's home territory. The Fleet of Retribution was no longer just a promise, it was now a proven force, and Nelson intended to use it. 3 years after the attack on New Horizon, the Fleet of Retribution entered the Caraxian home system. 300 ships, the largest human battle group ever assembled, moved in perfect formation toward the fifth planet. At their center was the massive flagship bearing the same name as the fleet itself, Retribution. On its bridge, Admiral Victoria Nelson surveyed the enemy defenses displayed on the tactical screens. The Caraxian homeworld was ringed with orbital platforms and defensive satellites. A fleet twice the size of her own protected the approaches to the planet. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her executive officer. Victoria nodded. "Begin the transmission." On every Caraxian communication channel in their own language, Admiral Nelson's face appeared. The universal translators had been perfected over the past year, allowing her to speak directly to her enemy. "This is Admiral Victoria Nelson of the human fleet of Retribution. Your forces attacked our colony of New Horizon without provocation. You killed our people and took prisoners. You planned to attack our homeworld. Now we have come to your home. Surrender your military forces and release any remaining human prisoners, or face the consequences." In the Imperial Palace on the planet, below, Imperator Zexakaloth watched the transmission with disbelief. The supreme leader of the Caraxian Imperium had ruled for 40 years, overseeing the subjugation of a dozen lesser species. None had ever dared to bring war to the Caraxian homeworld. "This is impossible," he said to his advisors. "How did they find us? How did they build such a fleet in only 3 years?" The military commander beside him had no answer. The humans had evolved their technology and tactics at a pace the Caraxians couldn't comprehend. Their rigid society, with its strict hierarchies and traditional methods, had never faced an enemy that adapted so quickly. "We will crush them," Zexakaloth declared. "Launch all ships. Show these humans the true might of the Imperium." Aboard the Retribution, Admiral Nelson received the Caraxian response. They're refusing to surrender, said her communications officer. They're moving their fleet to engage. As expected, Nelson replied calmly. Captain Ward, you may proceed with Phase 1. On the bridge of the Nemesis, now upgraded and commanding its own battle group, Captain Diana Ward acknowledged the order. All stealth ships activate targeting systems, fire when ready. Throughout the Caraxian defense network, key nodes suddenly exploded. The stealth ships had slipped into position days earlier, planting advanced weapons on critical targets. Shield generators, communication relays, and power systems failed across the Caraxian defenses. Phase 1 complete, Captain Ward reported. Their defenses are down by 30%. Admiral Nelson turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, execute Phase 2. Hayes sent the command, and across the human fleet, new weapons came online. These devices, based on Dr. Kevin Bailey's research into Caraxian technology, emitted frequencies that disrupted the enemy's shield harmonics. Fire, Nelson ordered. The human fleet unleashed its first volley. Beams of energy sliced through weakened Caraxian shields, disabling dozens of enemy ships. The Caraxians returned fire, but their shots were poorly coordinated due to the disruption of their communication systems. On the planet's surface, General Samuel Ortiz led the ground forces operation. Dropships raced through the atmosphere, targeting military installations identified by intelligence. The general's forces had trained specifically for this environment, using knowledge gained from the rescued New Horizon prisoners. Remember minimal civilian casualties, Ortiz reminded his troops as they landed. We're here for justice, not revenge. Among his advisors was Dr. Alan Mitchell, rescued from Caraxian captivity 18 months earlier. The xenobiologist had volunteered to help, providing crucial information about Caraxian physiology and society. Their command centers will be in the central towers, he told Ortiz as they moved through the alien city. They never expected ground forces to reach the surface. In orbit, the battle raged. The Caraxian fleet fought fiercely but was outmaneuvered at every turn. Admiral Nelson's ships targeted military vessels while avoiding civilian stations and transports. Their flagship is breaking formation, Hayes reported. They appear to be retreating toward the inner system. Don't pursue, Nelson ordered. Focus on the remaining defenders. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Caraxian orbital defenses lay in ruins and their fleet was scattered. The few ships that continued to fight surrendered when they saw they were alone. On the surface, General Ortiz's forces secured the Imperial Military Command Center. Caraxian soldiers, faced with weapons they couldn't counter and tactics they hadn't prepared for, surrendered in large numbers. In his palace, Imperator Zex Kaloth prepared to flee but found his escape routes blocked. Human forces had surrounded the building, cutting off all exits. This cannot be happening, he said as General Ortiz entered the throne room. We are the Caraxian Imperium. We have ruled the stars for 1,000 years. And yet here we are, Ortiz replied simply. The Imperator was taken into custody, the first time in Caraxian history that an Imperator had been captured by an enemy force. The event was broadcast across the Empire, showing other worlds that the unbeatable Caraxians had met their match. Admiral Nelson landed on the planet to oversee the peace negotiations. In the Imperial Palace, now serving as the headquarters for human forces, she faced the Caraxian ruling council. These are our terms, she said. First, all human prisoners will be returned immediately. Second, reparations will be paid to the families of those killed in the attack on New Horizon. Third, the Caraxian Imperium will withdraw from the territories of all species they have conquered against their will. The council members looked at each other in shock. They had expected their worlds to be occupied, their people enslaved as they had done to others. Why do you not destroy us? Asked one council member. You have the power. Because that's not who we are, Nelson replied. Humans fight when we must, but we prefer peace. We will not become like you. The peace treaty was signed the next day. As part of the agreement, a memorial to New Horizon would be built on the Caraxian capital world, ensuring that future generations would remember what happened when they attacked humanity. In the years that followed, the Caraxian Imperium reformed, guided in part by human advisors. Other alien civilizations, many freed from Caraxian control, established diplomatic relations with Earth. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. The fleet of Retribution remained active, serving as a peacekeeping force throughout known space. Its name stood as a reminder to any who might threaten humanity in the future. Earth continued its expansion among the stars, now recognized as a major power in the galactic community. On the 5th anniversary of the New Horizon attack, Commander Lisa Blackwell, now Admiral Blackwell, visited the memorial on the Caraxian homeworld. She stood before the wall listing the names of those lost in the attack. "We promised we would not forget," she said quietly. "And we promised they would remember what happens when they threaten our people." Above the planet, the Retribution stood watch, a symbol of humanity's resolve and its mercy. Its